Damn it. Come on, baby. You can do it. You can do it. Maybe,
but we're officially live here. Don't worry about it. I got us under control. The wind on the East Coast is trying to take this stream down, but it's take a lot more than wind for us not to talk about a little 3-game slate. Wild card weekend is here, of course. I'm Ben Raza, joined not by Loughy, who is powerless. Eric Lindquist says, you know what? I'm in California. I will hop on to talk about these games. We're going to go through them. We're going to ask some questions, answer some questions. Sir, thanks for filling in. I thought I was going to have to be flying solo, but you came to the rescue.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where I'm by my computer anyway. I'm putting in the work. I'm firing up stuff, getting ready to rock. And, well, yeah, it's just as simple as getting all my equipment set up and getting everything ready to rock, and here we are. So really not a big deal. I'll be on live before lock, barring something else in case, you know, Loughy gets his power back. He can switch on to that or something, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk football. I'm very excited for the 2 games we got going today and the 2 games tomorrow. So I thought yesterday was pretty entertaining until Miami put up a dud, but enjoyable stuff nonetheless.
Yeah. Yesterday was entertaining for me until the game started. It was one of those, thanks to Joe Flacco. But you know what? We got a lot of slates to get to, and we've got, like I said, this is a fun 3-game slate. I know it's a little wacky with the game tomorrow, but we're going to break all 3 down. I'm going to answer some questions in chat, including, I said to you, prosciutto covered cantaloupe. I didn't know that was a thing. That seems made up, but our chat rolls in the highest of circles. We're going to talk about Demarcus Robinson, no doubt about it. He's going to be a key piece of my lineup as well. But sir, what do you say? You ready to just dive into these games?
Yep, I am. I apologize to everybody that McCole Hardman can't locate footballs in the air. Twice. Wide open for 6. Comes
really
down with neither. Pain and suffering.
Isaiah Pacheco right in that end zone, though. Very, very useful for me. We celebrated that one hard.
It's good.
In Discord, and we're going to talk about Discord and many other things, including Owner's Box, who sponsors this show. We'll get to them in just a second, but I want to start with the game. Let's get into it. We've got Green Bay. We've got Dallas. We've got certainly, we're not going to be talking about weather for quite a while in this slate because we're all good, of course, in the dome, over 51 point total, about a touchdown favorite. It's come down a little bit. This is going to be a popular game. I mean, there's only 3 games, but let's just start with Green Bay, who has shown strides, and it's correlated with Jordan Love. I don't know. Maybe he is this good. Maybe he's playing over his head. He's been fantastic over the last month or so. So I'll get right to it. When you look at this slate, we've got 6 quarterbacks, really 5, and then Mason Rudolph, not to take shots at him early in the show. But where do you look at Jordan Love in terms of your priority list today?
Yeah, anybody who watched me cover some of the 6-game slate yesterday knows that I'm a pretty big fan of Jordan Love, especially on this 3-game slate. I'm a Viking fan traditionally, but from a DFS perspective, it's hard not to be impressed by some of the improvements we've seen throughout the season with Jordan Love. And there's a case to be made that Reed is just coming along for the ride in a way that you didn't expect at the wide receiver position. I mean, Jaden Reed's been awesome over the course of the last few weeks. He does get involved with a couple of those jet sweep type running handoffs, and he's just got a good set of skill position players. You've got a guy in Tucker Kraft who's emerged at tight end, been better than Luke Musgrave this season, although Musgrave just came back off of the IR, so I'm not going to panic there, but I find it to be a really appealing spot. I mean, 51 total in this game. They're dogs, but that probably improves his passing expectation. And you look at Jordan Love in the betting markets, 35.5 is his passing attempt number. That's a hefty dose of passing here that we're expecting from Jordan Love. So right from the get-go, this is the quarterback that I'm going to have a lot of interest to get different. Obviously, another great game environment coming up next with the Rams in Detroit, but this is probably the quarterback that I'm going to have the most leverage to on the field.
Yeah, I mean, again, of course, when you talk about a slate like this, we're talking about opportunity cost. How much do these dominoes affect being able to get CD Lamb, St. Brown, all the guys that we want to, because there's a lot of star power on this slate. And the Packers are, relative to the slate, I'd say a pretty cheap stack. We're bringing up the Sims right off the bat. And when I look on the screen, Jordan Love isn't the guy that's jumping right off the top, but he is in there. Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, which is an interesting situation, because the thing about Green Bay that I wanted to ask you to, and we have plenty of time today, of course, we're not going through 13 games or anything. Green Bay has been a walking wounded team. And it looks like Dillon, of course, is not going to factor in, which makes it easier in the backfield. But when you look at the receivers, and you've got like Watson still sporting a Q tag, we've got Wicks and Dubes and Reed. How do you prioritize that part of it? Because some of these guys' prices have been dependent on others being out during the year.
See, one of the benefits to being overweight to a Jordan Love is that you can kind of rotate between a lot of these guys, and there isn't any kind of an issue that I'm going to have to be able to get to them. I mean, Wicks is one of the better young route runners we've seen in a long time. I know that that's kind of a weird thing to throw out there, but I really like what Greg Olson was talking about on a telecast recently, where there are just things that Wicks does that are hard to teach a young wide receiver. The timing of routes, being able to be slow into a route and be able to break up the middle and catch it in tight corners. You saw 79% of the routes that he ran last time out, but now you get Dobbs, now you get Kraft, now you get a lot of these other guys that, it's going to be tough to really pin down. But by going overweight to Jordan Love, I don't have as much of a problem between just like, hey, I'm going to run a lot of doubles. And, we don't know what Christian Watson's workload potentially could be here in this spot. I don't feel great about it, but I think there's just such a big playability there that you need 3-4 targets maybe for Christian Watson to pay off at 4,500. I think for me, Jaden Reed is the clear-cut priority, because if you have an electric game from Jordan Love, it's probably by way of his electric pass catcher. Aaron Jones, I have in quite a few doubles with him too, but Dobbs and Wicks, two guys that I really do like. Dobbs, just a big frame out there, and Wicks, really impressed by everything he's done. So going to be rotating through a lot of iterations of these lineups. And, by being underweight to it, it's a lot more difficult to pin down, because I don't have a priority outside of Reed amongst the pass catchers.
Yeah, and that's, I think, kind of what you're talking about. The QB +2, +3 is going to be in play with Jordan Love, where you can say, I'm going to mix and match all of this and just hope to kind of get at the salaries are low enough they can coexist. We had a question about, is Love an even better play on FanDuel or Owner's Box? I think his price is actually pretty reasonable on all three. Owner's Box is basically in line with DraftKings in terms of the pricing for him. I think that's very appealing. We're going to talk about that in terms of the super flex. You get a couple quarterbacks in there today. So I have no issues with that. You mentioned Aaron Jones. Is Tucker Kraft in that same conversation for you in terms of just another rotational piece?
I'm nervous, but I think
I'm a little nervous too.
82% of the routes that he ran last time out, Luke Musgrave, just 18%. But it was a spot where obviously you've had Kraft playing really, really well. Musgrave just getting back off the IR. I don't know if we see, 70% to 30% for Musgrave, if it could end up being something where Musgrave just doesn't see the field yet again because Tucker Kraft's been that good for them. I don't know what to make of it. I think there's some extra volatility there. And, I do think that everybody's got it right where you're going more towards the craft side of things, but I don't think Musgrave's like some complete zero here because again, it's a 1 week sample size after being on the shelf for 7 weeks. So it's hard to get a grasp on, but I do think 3,300 considering they're pretty much identical there in terms of pricing. 3,300, 3,200 respectively. I like the craft side of it. As the double, he gives you the kind of savings you're looking for on the 6-game slate, especially. On the 3-gamer, I mean, Musgrave's a little bit more important, well, not important, but more involved in my lineups than on that 6-gamer. I think Kraft just more the ceiling, and I just feel better about the workload. Whereas Musgrave, I mean, it would take a lot for him to get ramped up to, I think, even like 40% of the snaps here.
Yeah, I mean, the way I view it, certainly would be Kraft would be the priority of the two, but I do think there's a reasonable chance that Musgrave cannibalizes where you might not want either of them. And I think that that's kind of how I'm treating it. If I go to a Packers tight end, it's going to be Kraft in these lineups. And then the last thing we can always you can make a case about any of this. We saw with the Texans twice yesterday. Defense is defense. I think the Packers should be the cheapest defense. I wouldn't go to them unless I say, I'm just going to punt it. Anything else? Oh, please.
I think the Packers defense is really interesting.
Okay, so, talk to me.
For one, Pollard's been pretty ineffective for the Cowboys, and they've shown in a lot of these spots that they're just going to throw the football around. Like in a lot of these games that have been even, 1-2 score games, Dak Prescott is attempting 38, 36, 39 in 3 of their last 5 games passing attempts. And you have a guy like Dak Prescott who's got the warts in the postseason that he does. I think $300 savings to the next defense is a big deal. Like you get to the Packers defense, you have access to types of lineups that other people just can't. You can get to CeeDee Lamb plus Amon-Ra St. Brown in kind of an agreeable way. And I know that, on a 6-game slate, maybe not going to be something that I do, but you're obviously going to play defense against a skill position player to some extent here. And I think CeeDee Lamb plus Packers, that's something that actually makes a ton of sense to me. You get in a game script where or maybe Dallas just is throwing it around the lot and focusing in on CeeDee Lamb. You get a tip ball, you have something go your way. $300 of savings is a big deal. So the Packers is a defense that I am way overweight to.
Okay, that's good to know. Again, these are the little things, and this is why I love doing the show. Never know where it's going to take you. And now, I will say, for what it's worth, they grade out pretty favorably in the Sims. Yep. They're not way down there by any stretch in terms of the defense. I want to move to the Cowboys. We had a question: can you play Love naked? I wouldn't do that. I mean, I do think in the playoffs, and he's shown the ability to run at times, but I still think on this slate, that's not what I'm really looking to do roster wise. You will be different, but I think that's about the only thing you accomplish.
Yep, perfectly said.
On the other side, the Cowboys, they've been just disgusting at home, racking up 40 points a game. Dak has every weapon imaginable. I want to start with the straight alpha. CeeDee Lamb is $9,000 on DraftKings. He, of course, is one of the premier spots. Are you paying up for him? Do you think that you can have Dak stacks without him? How do you prioritize all these Cowboy weapons?
You prioritize CeeDee Lamb.
Okay.
CeeDee Lamb at 9K might seem astronomical to a certain extent. What he does is he shores up a lot of raw points in your lineups. And, if you're trying to get different on this slate, I think he's kind of the one piece that I'm just not willing to be different about. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously you save $1,000 going to him, but because of the Packers defense, talking about my interest there, because I'm getting to a Jordan Love a little bit more than I'm getting to a Dak Prescott, $6,300, so $1,300 difference between the two. I have access to get to Lamb and Brown in a lot of my lineups. And it was kind of similar to yesterday where talked about getting to a lot more Tyreek Hill because of McCole Hardman. I ended up still profiting on a slate that, I thought was a pretty difficult one altogether. Singletary and Pacheco both worked out as chalk. We were happy to be there on that. It's just trying to find calculated ways of getting different. And something for me is when you look at CeeDee Lamb, you just go through his target rate. I mean, it's just absurd. He breaks the model in a lot of ways. And so at 9K against a Green Bay secondary that's going to try to do everything with Jair Alexander to try to slow him down, I don't think they're going to be able to. So I think this game is more of a shootout. I think having passing expectation from both sides of it makes both defenses appealing as well. But CeeDee Lamb for me is like a priority beyond a priority on this slate. I'm double the field.
When you look at that, so it sounds like you just want him in any format, any site from FanDuel, DraftKings, Owner Box. Yes. Where is Dak in this? I mean, of course, he makes a lot of sense. If CeeDee Lamb catches 4 touchdowns, that's a pretty damn good day for Dak. on his side, but are you running him on one-offs around, say, like Jordan Love stacks and you have CD on the other side? Is he just kind of he fits any type of lineup, or is there a specific build that you want when you picture paying that kind of price tag for him?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have CD Lamb with positive leverage here at the moment. That's just ridiculous to me that you're able to get positive leverage on a guy with a 26% boom percentage in the boom bust tool. It just makes sense for me to be overweight there. I don't feel the same way about Dak purely because, well, there's a lot of ways that this game script works out where, yeah, you get the 2 touchdown passes, but then Jordan Love on the other side for cheaper with some pretty good skill position players that we can rotate between as well. I think it's just going to be harder for me to land on this level of Dak Prescott. It seems the field is very confident in him, especially on like that 6-game slate that I was talking about from yesterday. He's by far the most popular quarterback. And then today for the Sunday slate, he's by far the most popular quarterback. I think for me, it's just finding more calculated ways to get different. I have a lot of Josh Allen interest for this slate as well, but Jordan Love, he's going to be the quarterback I get to more in this game. And we could see 30% ownership on Dak Prescott. If anybody played the 2-gamer yesterday, you can see some chalk getting jammed in some of these spots. 55% Joe Flacco in the flagship DraftKings tournament yesterday. Absolute insanity. I don't think Dak gets to that level where he could get boosted above 23.6%, which is his current ownership. But I got to think that people really feel comfortable about doubles with Dak because it's been printing this year.
Then we go to the backfield with Tony Pollard, who's going to be very, very popular. We have him projected around 25% on FanDuel, upwards of 40% on DraftKings with that really appealing tag. Now, he's been a frustrating roster piece all year. He can't find the end zone at times, but we're still looking at possibly 15 to 20 touches, some targets in there as well. Attachment to Dak, independent. Talk to me about him. You've got Aaron Jones and Gibbs and Montgomery in that same price range. Where does Tony Pollard fit in? Because he grades out really well looking at the tools.
Yeah, so if you look at offensive EPA for the Cowboys this season, they're second in passing just behind the 49ers, tied with the Dolphins for whatever that's worth. Don't read into yesterday for that. But looking at the rush rate, they've been downright average, 10th in EPA rushing the football this season. They are behind the Cardinals, the Bills, the Ravens, the Lions, the Dolphins, the Bears, lots of teams that had better expected points per attempt there. You're talking about here from the Dallas Cowboys side. They're just not a very good rushing team in this iteration of Pollard. He's coming off of a major injury. It's not all that surprising to see regression based on his workload. And, he had Zeke there once upon a time, and we were waiting for him to get unleashed. Well, now you're looking at a guy who's properly priced at 6,100. He is one of those guys that I'm way overweight to in best ball. So I know that if you've got a large portfolio of best ball, playoff best ball lineups or things of that nature, I think it made sense to get to a lot of Pollard because the Cowboys are that kind of team that could shoot out here and Pollard could end up being the guy who snipes a couple of goal line touches and this team could lose and it can work out for you. But for me, $6,100 is obviously underpriced for what we expect his role to be in this spot. And yet I'm just at the field. I don't really have any strong stance. 6,100 is probably appropriate pricing for a reason. So as I look at the board here, well, why is my mom calling me? There we go, because she doesn't think I'm on a show. But anyway, we've got Tony Pollard here coming in at the field, and I don't really think I don't think that's going to change between now and lock.
Yeah, I don't either. I like him quite a bit. I do think it's on DraftKings, he's going to be more popular, and he should be. That's a much more appealing tag than FanDuel. On FanDuel, you're looking at, again, mid-20s in ownership. I don't think he grades out quite as well there, but I do think he's going to get the work. There's a ton of touchdown equity for this team. They're, a touchdown favorite at home in the Dome. It's everything that you could ask for. Before we move on to the next game and talk about owner's box and some of the other things we got going on, I want to ask you about the non-CD Lamb pass catchers. You've got Ferguson that fills the tight end position. That's not the easiest in the world. And then you've got Brandon Cooks. And that's about it. I mean, if you're going to Michael Gallup or Tolbert or someone that I'm not thinking of, feel free. But what do you do with the rest of Dallas?
Yeah, I think the punts, just because we have better punts coming up. You got Khalil Shakir. You've got Demarcus Robinson showing up in the low 3Ks. I think Gallup and Tolbert, those are just the largest of large field plays. You're looking to bring like a third guy along for the ride in Dak stacks, and maybe that can work out for you. All it takes is one touchdown catch on these 3 gamers and, Demarcus Robinson to fail, Shakir to fail. But I think we just all expect their target rates to be far and above that of Gallup and Tolbert. So I'm with you. Brandon Cooks is interesting if you're going to go some non-CD Lamb stacks as well, where you're trying to get different, him and Ferguson. Ferguson, he's a South Dakota boy after my heart here. Rapid City, South Dakota, the pride of. So 4,700 for him. He's been pretty darn reliable. 71 catches on the season, 761 yards. Pretty decent first outing as the tight end one there in Dallas. Really enjoy what he's been able to do. I think he makes sense as another great double option. It's a question though of like how much Dallas do you want to be invested in this first game, because it does eat up a lot of your swappability as the slate plays out. This is 1/3 of the slate. I think for me, it's just going to be a very, very heavy CD Lamb spot, about at the field on Pollard and underweight to Dak. And I'm hoping that that's really about all that I get to in this game, so that I can kind of maneuver into stuff later on, because the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game is far more appealing now than what it would have been as the first game today. No doubt about that. But the Detroit and Rams game is obviously crazy shootout potential, and you have a lot of swappability from this first game into that one. I'm hoping it's very, very heavy Lamb, heavy on the Packers side, moving along with my life.
So final thoughts from this, favorite plays from this game. We'll just do it like that. I know it's a little noisy with only 3 games, but priorities from this game.
Aaron Jones, we didn't talk about really priority for this game. What's your level of interest in Aaron Jones? Because he's the highest owned running back. I like him exponentially more than Pollard because of what I can see in the passing game. Aaron Jones is going to get bell cow work, which just never happens for Aaron Jones. So you get him unleashed in a spot like this with no AJ Dillon. And I just feel like at 6,300, he is a priority beyond a priority. No?
I'm with you. You know, we've seen him now. He's healthy. He's not competing with touches with Dillon. The game script shouldn't matter. He's a priority. Pollard's a priority. CD Lamb is CD Lamb. Like, yes, I wish I could play him, of course, and I'm going to absolutely make room for him, but it is what it is with that type of price tag. So you're looking at a lot of popularity coming from this game. You're going to see a lot of ownership from this game, I think, on every site. And I think it's warranted. So let's get to the next game. But before we do that, because we got all sorts of things going on here. And I want to start with Owner's Box because they sponsor this show. People have already asked, what about the roster construction there? And I think it's a great question because you're unfamiliar with Owner's Box. You have the ability to do different things with the Superflex. You can play 2 QBs, your different price points. And the greatest thing about it, when there's an unsolved format, is it's exploitable, and our tools are geared towards Owner's Box. So if you haven't played there and you're looking to get that deposit match up to $500, the link is below with them. Sign up. Doesn't mean you move all your action there. I say that every time me and Loughy talk about that. It's just part of, you just referenced this with Best Ball, part of the portfolio. Owner's Box absolutely, I think, deserves to be in there. You see that they've got contests in that lobby. There's overlay to be had. And again, you get to say, man, if I love Dak and I love, Goff and the other game, play them both. Be different. You can do that over there. It's things that you can't do on DraftKings and FanDuel. So shout out to that. We'll definitely be talking about that throughout the show. It seems like there are 2 games and then there's the third game, and we're going to get to the third game, of course, but this is the other marquee game in terms of points. You've got Detroit, you've got the Rams, and a lot of people, I'm interested to hear if you're one of them, think that the Rams are going to win this game in a minor upset. It's a pretty competitive game, a very healthy total. Let's start with this Rams team that has been playing great football. They've won a bunch. Their only loss in the past 2 months has been to Baltimore. What do you think? Just big thoughts on the Rams today.
I think the Rams are going to get after Detroit's secondary. So I don't know if I really have a play on the game. I do like the Rams shout out there. I think the Lions have a lot of ammunition. The Sam Laporta thing, that sucked to watch last week. Leading into this, I wanted these teams to just play a little bit more straight up. But the Lions, they've had some injuries here at the cornerback position, and the Rams should be able to exploit that because Puka Nacua is him. There's really no doubt about it. Kyren Williams has the best role outside of maybe even Christian McCaffrey, probably even a little bit better now that Eli Mitchell's off the IR. Kyren Williams, 7,300. I mean, this is just an awesome spot to be getting to the Rams, no doubt about it. I think that's kind of the preferred side. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to pull a ton of ownership today. I think it is completely warranted. So what it sounds like you're doing with CD Lamb and being a little bit below him, I'm getting to more Lamb because I think people are going to use that $1,000 savings to go elsewhere. And I feel like I want to be overweight to the Nacua side of this one. So 29.8%, 7,200. he's been the number one over Cup since they've been together here over the course of the season. It came out a little bit slow there out of the gate once Cup got back, but Puka Nacua is absolutely him. And there's no way at 7,200 that, I'm not going to find him in a large allotment of my lineups. Matt Stafford is obviously an appealing guy to get to a lot of these doubles with. He's lower owned than Goff. He's lower owned than Allen. He's way lower owned than Dak, like everybody is on this slate. So I look at the Rams as a team that it's just really easy for me to carve them out, because if they explode in this spot, we know exactly who it's going to be.
So I assume probably particularly with Stafford, you're comfortable with Nacua and Cup, Nacua and Robinson, a combination of all these guys, and then Kyren in that backfield who has been playing. I know he's expensive, but he absolutely has been paying off that tag time and time again. The usage is through the roof with Williams. I assume you're very comfortable with like Rams onslaughts in a 3-game slate.
Very much so. And I mean, even Higbee, 3,400, he's the third highest owned tight end that we have going on the slate here in this spot. But as you work through your lineups, I mean, Matt Stafford, we know there's absolutely no rushing equity there. What's hard about a Josh Allen, but I'm going to be overweight to it for what it's worth, but Josh Allen, you're basically playing singles. You could play onslaughts. You could play so many iterations of lineups, but with Matt Stafford, for it to pay off, you are getting to 2 or more guys from this team. So I'm finding Kyren Williams in a lot of these lineups with Stafford. I'm finding a lot of paths with Demarcus Robinson, who, again, wide receiver 3 out of nowhere, outplayed Tutu Atwell coming down the stretch. And I feel like it's a pretty reliable piece of chalk at 3,600. Now, I will find paths off of that in the event that I need to, because, something happens in Green Bay, Dallas, and I'm trying to get different in certain lineup spots, or I'm trying to, you should always be playing for first. And so late swap's just a part of it no matter what. But I do think that he's probably the cheapie that I prefer out of everybody else on the slate. I prefer him more than Shakir. I prefer him more than a lot of these tight ends, because Kraft, there is that uncertainty there. So he's my favorite piece of savings if the slate started like this second and we knew everything.
I'm with you. And yeah, we had a super chat right at the beginning of the show about Demarcus Robinson from Brad saying really, really heavy exposure to him. I get it. Yep. I do. He would be my hit on option. I will say, and you just echoed this, he's not in an isolated range. There are pivots. Shakir is a real pivot. He's also going to be popular. Jameson Williams is down there. I think that's a little more aggressive, but again, a name to at least keep in mind. But it is hard to look at the Rams and look at what you mentioned with Stafford, who really only has one way to get there, and not think that a pay down option as an attachment as a +2 or +3 is a nice little piece of this game. Anything else though, really? I mean, I know you said, and we talked a little about Kyren Williams. I want to just talk about him a little more though, because I think he deserves it. The guy is just, so he's got 20 or more carries in 5 straight games. He's got 4 or more targets in 3 of those games. I mean, it's just no way to phase him out. Is he your favorite running back on the slate, or would you rather say, give me the savings to an Aaron Jones, to a Pollard? I like Kyren, but not as much as those guys.
Yeah, Kyren, 87% of the rushing attempts week 17. He hasn't had lower than 77% of the rushing attempts since week 12, which was his first week back in those, the 5-week absence that he had. So Kyren Williams, it's a workload deal. It's insane. The routes were down in week 17, but obviously playing ahead and just doing what they needed to do to secure that playoff spot. So that Giants spot was a competitive game that kind of didn't expect at the very end there. But I look at Kyren Williams as the most certain workload of anybody in the NFL. 7,300. It's an expensive tag relative to my lineups. When you talk about how much CeeDee Lamb I have, Amon-Ra St. Brown on the other side of this game, that's going to be somebody that I unfortunately am going to be shorting more than likely. But I look at Kyren as just, if you can get to him, you get to him, because the workload is absurd.
It really is. And yeah, I wasn't, of course I ran our Sims right before the show, and he wasn't overwhelmingly there. I was getting some and I was very comfortable with that. But you mentioned there's so many running backs, Pollard and Aaron Jones in particular, that were kind of popping into my lineups. And it is an expense. It's an expense if you're allocating to running back. The chances that you can go get Lamb and go get some of these other guys obviously diminishes. We did have a question. I'm going to kind of rapid fire this to you. Ace of Spade was saying about DK tiers, which we don't talk about a lot, but happy to just go through a couple of them here. So tier 2, I think, is the most interesting. You have Lamb, Kyren, St. Brown, and Nacua. Is it CeeDee Lamb for you there? Is he just too good?
Yeah, it's probably CeeDee Lamb for me. Obviously, the way that my lineups shake out, it'd be weird to recommend something else. But the appealing part of not doing it in tiers in tier 2 is you have one piece of chalk that you get to pay attention to, and you get to know exactly what that ownership is. And then you have three choices where the best one is obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown, just purely off projection. He's only 2.5, 3 fantasy points lower than that of Lamb. So if Lamb ends up being 40, 50% owned in some of those spots, you could go to Amon-Ra St. Brown and know that you're getting it in good. And if CeeDee Lamb ends up having a dud game and you look at the rest of the tiers, you look at the rest of your lineup and you feel pretty live about it, yeah, you could go to a Kyren Williams, say this game just ends up being a little bit more of a grind with the running game on both sides of this one. Obviously, we'll talk about Gibbs and Montgomery here in a second and our interest level there. But I mean, Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, those are pretty awesome spots if you're getting a massive ownership discount off of Lamb.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a perfect segue into the Lions side of things, because it seems like a guy like Montgomery or Gibbs could be really good leverage as well in tiers. And just in general, we talked about how deep running back is. If Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard are that popular, just by product, yes, you can get 3 running backs in, but they all can't be popular. And Gibbs is going to have ownership. So what does that do to Montgomery? Is he leveraged? So talk to me about the Lions. We saw Dan Campbell. I'm not gonna get crazy too early in the show. I didn't like him playing his starters. I thought that was stupid.
Same.
Laporta got hurt. Apparently he's going to play. They're here. It's time to go. What are we doing with the Lions?
I don't know how to parse through Gibbs and Montgomery. I feel like everybody's been doing this for the last couple of weeks. Last week is like the perfect example of the disaster that we all saw coming. 52% of the running back snaps for Jahmyr Gibbs, 48% for David Montgomery, a true 50-50 split. Now, if you're going to have a 50-50 split, the guy I'm going to prefer more than not is the guy who catches passes on DraftKings. That would be Jahmyr Gibbs. But if this game ends up being a game script where they're up early, I could see them just pounding it with David Montgomery. He only had 10 rushing attempts against Minnesota. They were up a majority of that game. Again, just the weirdest game plan from Dan Campbell and company that you could ever imagine there. But I do think David Montgomery has that opportunity for 15, 20 touches in a game script that they end up. For me, if you're building out a large portfolio of lineups, it's hard to really say, all right, this is my stance that I'm going to have, and this is how I'm going to put these lineups together. I think for me, if I'm hand building out some stuff in 3-max, I think David Montgomery's like the take the air out of this gameplay where you just want to be overweight to him. You maybe play him in like 2 of your 3-max and say, I think that he gets the goal line work. I think he's the guy who ends up, killing this game altogether. And then you have all the leverage and all the land, either from the Green Bay, Dallas side of it, Pittsburgh, Buffalo side of it. I think that that's something that I'm probably going to do, but it's hard not to just have interest in both him and Gibbs. And Gibbs traditionally, just because of that passing game role, I do think that he'll end up getting steamed up a little bit more than we currently have.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people have more interest in Gibbs. He fits into your stacks, electric player. Montgomery, you're right, though. That is something that I don't think can be overstated. Montgomery not only can fall in the end zone twice randomly, he can kill so much of this game, and with it, a ton of ownership. It's not like it automatically works that way, but certainly I think it's pretty clear to draw a distinction that if Montgomery has a good game, he is siloing those points. It's not complimenting anybody, and those are points that you can never get back, and that is huge on a slate like this. So yes, my interest is drawn to St. Brown and certainly Gibbs. And if you're pairing Goff with them, that makes a lot of sense. Jameson Williams, I mentioned him before. I do think he's a reasonable pay down option. Nervous, him and Reynolds are just there. Any interest in those guys?
No, this is probably going to end up being the difficult part of this slate. Again, the cheapies. Demarcus Robinson grades out so much better because he's been on the field like 100% of the time. He's been getting targeted. He's also been playing really, really well. I don't think the same can really be said about Jameson Williams. Now, they've kind of kept him on ice a lot of this season to maybe let him go out and try to cook here in this spot, maybe, but they've played some must-win type games coming down the stretch, and we never saw him extended beyond 72% of the routes. So I feel as though Jameson Williams is just fine. Obviously, the game environment and doubles with Goff, and there's a lot of reasons that you should be getting to some. I do kind of weirdly feel better about Josh Reynolds. They basically kept Donovan Peoples-Jones as kind of an insurance policy for this team. He got up to 33% of the routes last time out, but that ended up hurting Jameson Williams a little bit more. Josh Reynolds still saw the field a ton, 81% and 91% of the routes there in week 17 and 18 respectively. So for me, I think Josh Reynolds is probably the guy that, Yeah, it's $300 more. Yeah, there's a lot of places that have him projected a little bit worse than that of Jameson Williams. But I feel like if Jameson Williams didn't come from Alabama and didn't have this profile as this guy who was a deep shot type dude, that we would see people flocking to the guy who I think is just on the field more and has a better opportunity for it. And that's, for me, Josh Reynolds.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he might be in the MVS bucket of like he's perpetually out there and somehow doesn't do, even though MVS caught a pass yesterday, cashed that over 0.5 receptions if for some disturbing reason. That was on your card.
Yep. I
can't either with that. I do think
Jair Alexander active. That was the biggie that I was waiting for the whole time.
Not surprised though, right?
Yeah. We were expecting him to play, but you kind of wanted the confirmation, and AJ Dillon inactive. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Christian Watson active.
Things, we needed just to make sure that would change a lot. No big surprises there. I do think that is one of the big decisions on this slate though. If you think that Jameson Williams is a direct pivot off Robinson and you're willing to take that risk, you're going to shave off a ton of ownership. Now, you can also combine both of them and pay up. I have lineups like that have a double punt because Shakir, we're going to get to in just a little bit. But anything else from this Lions, I think they're one of the listen, it's 6 teams, so you can say this about most. Getting the Lions right today, I think, is key because the way they operate, we've seen them, they're very aggressive. Goff will throw even one up, or there are Montgomery games. And then you have a Lions defense that's middle of the pack. Feels like most people are trying to pay up or punt with either the Steelers or, as you talked about, the Packers.
You didn't talk about my favorite play from this entire team yet.
And who was that?
Brock Wright.
Brock Wright. Yeah, okay. We didn't talk about this. So what do you make of the tight end situation? Because Laporta may give it a go. He's still relative, he's priced as he's okay. It's going to be a tough sell to get him. He's not going to be popular. You're willing to go to a non-Laporta tight end on this team?
Yeah, I am, because it's 3K, and 3K does a lot for you down here. So if you look at some of the punt tight ends that you have an opportunity to get to, Hayward, Washington, no thank you for either of them from the Pittsburgh side. Allen has been getting mixed in a little bit, Davis Allen there from the Rams side, but hard to really know that he's going to be on the field with Higbee there, who's been dinged up. So Higbee should be good to go here. He got the week off there in San Francisco. So it looks good for Tyler Higbee, I think, to be solidified with that workload. I have no idea what to make of Sam Laporta's injury. He practiced in full. He looked awful as soon as this injury happened. It's a knee. There's so many things to be worried about with it. So if you're going to be worried about Sam Laporta and the workload, I mean, it's easy to get to him and say, all right, he plays 100% of the snaps. He's 1% owned, and in a 150 set, you get a little bit there. But for me, I'm far more interested in taking the savings on a 3K Brock Wright and saying, all right, Laporta's limited. All right, Laporta might not even see the field very much. Now, I don't know what to make of it. I would guess Laporta sees the field, but I get such an ownership discount on what could be a tight end 1 here in this spot. So Brock Wright at 3K, I think you blindly play him in some lineups. There's always the chance that a goal line touch ends up working out for you the way it did in week 10 for him. There ends up being that showdown slate where they're going up against the Chargers and it ended up panning out for you. But Brock Wright at 3K, he could be walking into a far larger workload. That's something that projections just have a tough time with, parsing through what this injury could be.
Absolutely. There's unknowns there and there's inferences to be made. And if you get it right, again, we saw yesterday, your boy Brevin Jordan's just running up the sidelines, is 80 yards for a touchdown.
Nobody even tried to tackle Brevin Jordan in that spot.
No. I'm like, oh, wow. Big gain. Oh, wow. Like, really big gain.
I thought it was a dump off to Devin Singletary when it first happened, and I jumped off the couch, and I was like, that is Brevin freaking Jordan.
Yeah. The last time I played Brevin Jordan, he took a ball off the face mask because the sun was glaring down on him. And that was about that. That's how it went. But if you can get that, we're going to talk about Dawson Knox, another punt tight end potentially in this next game. But as people probably have noticed by now, I'm not Loughy. Loughy's not here because his power is out. But if he was here, he would do 2 things. I can guarantee it. First, he would ask me, how many likes do you think we're going to get? And now I'm going to pass that tradition on to you. I don't even know how many likes we have. But I want to see how many likes we can get in Loughy's absence. I know we're not going to get to 2,000 or 15 or all the crazy things I say, but can we get to 500? Let's see if do you think we can do that, sir? We can do that, right?
No. I don't think we can. I'm going to play the role of you. I'm going to be the heel in this thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm stepping into my villain era. It is what it is.
And
Yep, you're welcome.
you know what else he would say? He
What?
would tell you what we're going to tell you, and we're more excited than him. I can guarantee this. We're still running the promo on the Sims to get not just for the NFL playoffs, but you're getting the PGA Sims.
And we got the PGA guys. Let's go.
Next week, and we do the PGA show. The promo code is Drive. The link is in the description. You have seen the Sims on the screen. Jordan's been doing a great job displaying them. You have seen the screenshots from not just people at this company, but so many subs who've had a ton of success. It's changing the way DFS is played. It's really, really powerful stuff. If you want to see them, if you want to use them through the Super Bowl, the code is Drive. And if you play PGA, or you say, you know what, I'm not ready to commit for PGA, but I'd love to test drive them. Well, here's your chance. Come on in for the Amex next week. Really cool stuff. A great deal. You hop on in, see what you think. If it's not for you, it's not part of your process, of course, no pressure. But we really believe in that stuff. A lot of success, and we think you'll enjoy it. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that.
I know. I'm currently right now. Again, I went straight off the Sims. I'm doing a golf update. I'm in 12th in the $10 18 max, that 18 max that they run out every week.
Yeah. The resurgence or whatever it's called.
37th right now in the $5 with a pretty clear shot. If I can get a big day out of Eric Cole, life could be fun. He's 1 over through 5, so I need him to get going now. But that is strictly off the Sims tool. Currently 3xing my entry fees, have a pretty clear shot at some wins. And again, a lot of my process here, right from the get-go, first full field event was just jamming a lot of the Sims in. And obviously I love seeing that other people are having that same exact success, sitting in a really good spot going into Sunday.
Well, hopefully you close the door. I need Benyon or Keegan, and we'll see. But yeah, really good stuff. Come hang out with us. And again, when you do, you hop in Discord as well. Let's get to this last game. The game that may never be played. It's supposed to be, then they pushed it. It's a blizzard. Obviously, of the 3 games, it's pretty clear to draw a distinction amongst this game against the other 2. You know, just whether you're looking at odds, you know, I'm on Odd Shopper all the time on the betting side, just to see the totals and stuff. It's pretty clear that this game is different. We're talking about a sub 40 total. It may not be blizzard conditions, but it's not going to be great. So let's start to dive in. I think Pittsburgh is the team, obviously, that will have the least amount of ownership cumulative of any team. You think that's warranted? Do you think there are playable, skill position players on the Steelers team?
How could you not like George Pickens? I mean,
yeah. All it takes is one.
It takes is one. And how about the guy who's built like Adonis, 5,200, and Deontay Johnson, one of the best route runners? It's always a question of if like his hands are attached to his body or if he just feels like slamming the football at the ground from time to time. But George Pickens is that dude. He is absolutely built for this kind of a spot where it's going to be still ugly weather. It's not like the totals have gone crazy here. You have a 14 implied total. And I do think Najee and Jalen Warren, they're going to snipe each other. They're pulling about appropriate ownership. And we've had that back and forth with them all the time this season. That's obviously the thing that got them there here in the first place, was going into Seattle, going into Baltimore, running the damn ball. And Najee Harris has been a little bit better in that regard, but I think my favorite play overall is George Pickens relative to ownership. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is always the balance of, it's relative to ownership. Do I think that George Pickens has a great chance of success? Not really. I don't think him or Deontay Johnson do. But all it takes is one thing. And, Buffalo, their defense at times really, they've been banged up. They haven't been great. I agree in sub 40 point total. It's not the most ideal situation. And you do have a Mason Rudolph who's they don't want him to throw the ball 40 times. If he throws the ball 40 times, they probably got killed. Might be good for our lineups, but they want to get out of there with an ugly, grinded out game, shorten the clock, find a way to get a lucky turnover. And Josh Allen at times does do that. So I get it. I'm not getting to, I'll get this out of the way. I'm not really getting to Freiermuth. I think he's more on the outside looking in for me. And then what are you doing with this backfield? This is another, the Najee and Warren kind of coin flip has been plaguing us all year. Do you have a favorite of the two, or do you say it's not really an area I'm getting much because of Jones and Pollard and Gibbs and Montgomery?
One of the nice things when you have a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers who only play for things going down the end of the season is it basically sets you up to know what the usage is going to look like in a playoff game, barring an injury, barring something else. And I do think that's where Najee Harris, he's been getting more of the workload, 66, 60, and 68% of the snaps in week 16, 17, and 18, all must-win spots here for the Steelers. So again, you kind of know what that usage is going to look like. Jaylen Warren's been way down in terms of usage, 28, 29, and 21% of the rushing attempts. I'm surprised the ownership's as close as what it is when you take that into consideration. It almost feels like people are just blindly playing Jaylen Warren. Hey, he can be the quote unquote passing down back and, things of that nature. But like, if Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren are going to work out, I need touchdowns. Like, I'm going to need them to find ways into the box. I don't think I can just blindly get to Jaylen Warren and, hey, they're going to be down 10 and you're going to have this pan out for you. Obviously, the price is something you have considered there, $300 difference between the two. But I do think Najee Harris, more times than not, is going to work out optimal. That's kind of being shown here in the boom bust tool as well. So I feel like Najee is the priority for me just because that workload is far more secure.
Yeah, I mean, Najee in some ways is analogous, I think, to kind of Montgomery. If he has a game and it really gets sluggish, he's going to kill a lot of this game. Now, the difference is this game isn't as expected to really get out there. And to me, Buffalo, of course, is the team that is more interesting and also kind of on this slate, I think maybe possible leverage because most people are, I think, a little apprehensive to go to a game outdoors when you have two games with potent offenses indoors.
Yeah.
Now, Josh Allen, you mentioned he's so good, but he's very difficult because he could run the ball in 3 times and you want him and you don't want Diggs. You don't want Shakir. You don't want one of the tight ends. You don't want Cook. When you look at Buffalo as our last team here, how do you prioritize them? It's kind of the question I've been asking all show. And Josh Allen, is he someone that you're willing to run all the way from naked to a full onslaught?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that you want to have exposure to Josh Allen. Now, first off, he has negative leverage, even at 8K there. His ownership, 20.3%, optimal percentage around 15.7. But the thing is exactly what you said, where that's like pregame ownership. We're going to know exactly how much ownership is coming in on Josh Allen because Mason Rudolph's going to be pretty much untouched here with the 6 quarterbacks going here. And I think Josh Allen is going to absorb almost all of the ownership that's empty. You're going to be able to add up everything that you have there from those first 2 games, and you're going to know exactly what the ownership is, which I think can help you decide what else to do with that stack. So for me, I don't even know who I'm going to necessarily be prioritizing on the bottom end because I do think Shakir and Sherfield, they're not interchangeable by any means, but with Gabe Davis out, there's this little bit of a wrinkle where Sherfield, Hardy, those kind of guys have a lot of utility in lineups where, hey, I'm trying to play for first. I need to get away from Shakir, or I need to get away from Kincaid, or I need to get away, from somebody else or something else, and I can rotate in Pittsburgh pieces. I think there's just a lot of utility to being overweight to Josh Allen just to absorb all the information. And then you also know that the rushing equity with him can just vulture everything else from this team. You get to the goal line situations that can help, phase out Cook lineups that might be beating you, help you phase out other things in your lineup. So for me, there's such a late swap element because we don't get this very often. This is like something that used to exist and people just don't touch their lineups enough. I promise you, it happens every single one of these slates that are 2-day type slates. So for me, I'm going to be overweight to him just to gather all the information. And then I know I have this crazy ceiling of, 40 DraftKings points. It's pretty hard for anybody else to get to on this slate. And he can do it all by himself or in singles.
What about James Cook? He's someone that I think is being a little overlooked, and it's not anything he's doing. It's a product of this slate. I think we've already talked about Kyron, Gibbs, Jones, Pollard. All these guys are super interesting and in great spots. Well, James Cook is the other guy in that price range. Yes, at times he has some fumbling issues, but he's also had some monster games. He gets vultured by his quarterback at times, but he's also at times found the end zone. Where is he on this running back list for you? And do you think that you're going to get an ownership discount? Looking at him right now, you're not really, he's still pretty popular, which surprises me a little bit.
I'm not going to get to James Cook. And
you and me both, kind of.
I'm really worried that this is like, do you get the impression that they've just kept Leonard Fournette in practice squad mode and just chilling, and now they're going to play him like 40% of the time? Because I kind of do, and I kind of have interest in 4,400 Leonard Fournette. It wasn't a must-win game there against Miami, but we saw 7 rushing attempts, nothing special there. We know the receiving role can be there if need be. And James Cook is definitely the better back. We saw that ceiling. It can be ridiculous, like you saw against Dallas. Like, there's no doubt. But He started to phase off. He was getting a lot more work than you would expect him to, and probably more work than they wanted to give him coming down to the end of the year because they needed to run the board to get here. But I think Leonard Fournette plays enough to be viable. And I also think he plays enough for me to just suppress my ownership on James Cook, considering a quarter of the field wants to be clicking on him.
That's where I think it is really tricky. You got, say, and I just use this as an example, regardless of who the backup is for Buffalo. If they throw the ball, pass interference in the end zone, it's on the 1 yard line. Who's the most likely touchdown scorer? To me, it's Josh Allen. Who's second? I think
Leonard
it's either Fournette or Murray, whoever's back there. James Cook might be
Murray,
the third
Murray,
option.
a healthy scratch last week was very telling to me, where I'm like, I think they've kept Leonard Fournette on the practice squad, just chilling. He was out there doing the tush push. If you watch that game, Leonard Fournette was the guy pushing Josh Allen in the back. He was out there in a lot of those big moments to help them solidify the 2 seed. So for me, only 19 and 21% of the snaps. I'm not saying jam Leonard Fournette like I am Mecole Hardman, and I will repeat, Mecole Hardman needed to just locate the football 1 of 2 times, and he is paying off for you at 3,100. For me, this is not nearly that type of a play, but 2 things Leonard Fournette does. 1, he flips a build for you at 4,400. If you're going to use up almost all your salary, nobody else can get to those type of builds. And 2, it helps you to just suppress your ownership on James Cook, and it kind of tells a story in your lineups of what that usage could look like.
Yeah, no doubt. Last guy I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll turn it over to you again. Stefon Diggs. It hasn't been a good year. It's been a lot of different things. There's been moments, there's been flashes, but he hasn't gotten the, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, 20 target games. They've been few and far between, and most of them were early in the season. You're looking more, last 4 games, 5, 8, 7, and 8. And these are big games for them. Do you think he still has the upside? He's sandwiched between those Rams wide receivers and some of those others. Is Stefon Diggs maybe a leverage spot on this slate?
A couple of things. Bill Miner said 4 eyes is back to the practice squad. You can only get called up a number of times throughout the year. There's ways around it. I don't know how it all pans out. Obviously, if Leonard Fournette is active, play him a little bit. And if he isn't, again, I have him in 4% of my lineups. I have James Cook in 10. So, for me, I don't have a ton of exposure. It's not going to make my week one way or another. But anywho, wanted to address that because I don't want people to think that he said to play Leonard Fournette. Now there's nobody to pivot to. You have Latavius Murray, who would be the other guy who would be active. He's at 4,300 and it's only $100 less. So don't freak out. Leonard Fournette's the most expensive of those cheapies. You could always pivot to whomever. We know Ty Johnson's probably going to be active for his return game at least. So be paying attention to that news. But anywho, who were you asking about to round it out?
No, just Dick. I think that's a good point. I just want to echo that. I think my more overall point there is going to be someone on the Bills active roster that can vulture over James Cook, and that is a concern to me.
Yep.
I specifically just wanted to ask you about Stefon Diggs, who, again, he's not getting the double-digit targets of late. Do you think the Gabe Davis situation, it being the playoffs, or just the fact that it's Diggs, can put him in the conversation, or is he just truly firmly behind Kupp, Nakua, and those type of players when you're looking to pay mid-7s?
Yeah, I think he's way behind those guys, but okay. I have more than the field right now, and it's purely because of my Josh Allen exposure. If Josh Allen has a crazy game with somebody, I would expect that it would be Stefon Diggs. But I do like Dalton Kincaid quite a bit. The field is getting there in a pretty pronounced way. And then Khalil Shakir, he's rightfully the most popular punt outside of Demarcus Robinson here at the moment. Khalil Shakir walking into a potential wide receiver 2 role, but we know how much 12 they like to play when they have Kincaid and Knox healthy. They've faded away from that a little bit at times when it was 3 wide receiver sets. But what I start to think too is how do you feel about Dawson Knox at 2,900? Because the field's playing him double digit, and I'm just not sure what that workload's going to look like. But for me, Stefon Diggs, 7,400, pretty easy to see a path where a single works out with him and Josh Allen.
Yeah, I do have some of that right now. I haven't finished building, but I have some Allen to Diggs just because I really do believe in that. I think the Titans are a little trickier. You've got Kincaid more in the Ferguson bucket, and then you've got Knox more in the punt bucket. If you don't like Kraft and you're looking at him and the Lions, things like that. So I get it. I think and you have to embrace this on a 2 or 3 game slate. I think Dawson Knox is very live to get 0, but he's also certainly live to catch a touchdown. That's just kind of the risk you take. It only takes a couple targets. You're not going to be peppered most likely, but that could open up a ton of salary if you get that. And I do have attachments where I have Allen plus a wide receiver and Knox. And you could even go, I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, if you went Allen, Shakir, and Knox, like you can get
Yeah.
one-offs of Lamb. You can go get one-offs of Nakua. And you can really have a pay down stack, Josh Allen's running upside mixed around some of those things. So I do think that that's kind of an interesting wrinkle. Final thoughts on this game? Anything else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, two things. Somebody said Davis out. Seems like Diggs would be an obvious play. Yes, but the conditions aren't exactly going to be favorable. We're still looking at a pretty low total, whereas Green Bay, Dallas, Los Angeles Rams, and Detroit, they're playing in domes, and life is beautiful and wonderful, and all those wide receivers should be getting easier targets, you would assume, than what anything Mason Rudolph and Josh Allen are going to be slinging out there on Monday morning, afternoon, depending on where you are. But feeling pretty good about being overweight to George Pickens. Deontay Johnson, I don't really have a feel for, but obviously, if there's lineups that I'm trying to pivot, I could reduce a lot of ownership going from Pickens to Deontay Johnson. There's a lot of places that have a pretty large disparity between Pickens and Johnson. So again, I'll have a better idea of where ownership lands because we'll be able to accumulate all of that information. And then Pat Freiermuth, he's been kind of out in the cold here the last couple of games. Yes. He had that one crazy ceiling game against Cincinnati. But don't completely sleep on him in a weather spot. There should be a lot of short yardage dump off types that set up for Pat Freiermuth here in this spot. So another guy that I'm trying to talk myself into being overweight on. But again, there's a reason that they have that he's low owned. He's got a 14 total attached to his team's name.
No doubt about it. And you can do what I always like to do with these guys. And it's the last thing I wanted to say before we bounce it out of here. That has to do with where you and me spend a lot of time over on the odd shopper side of things. If you like to bet, or you just want to use it as a reference point, I think it is a good way to get a feel for what's going on. And someone like Diggs, his receptions prop, 5.5 right now, slightly juiced to the under. But that gives you an indication of where the books are thinking. And I'll be honest, we have a little value showing up on the over for Diggs reception out there, particularly on DraftKings. So just another piece of the puzzle. And with that, as I always mention, I like to make sure everyone knows what's going on. If you are in a state where you can do some of that wagering, you've seen it over on OddsShopper. We've been talking about it, and you've probably seen it on Twitter as well. BetMGM is doing a bet and get, which means if you sign up there and you bet 5, you get 158. You're talking about $158 in bonus bets. It's an opportunity. If you say, okay, college basketball, NFL, NHL, NBA, I don't have enough to go around, the bonus bets can really help. So if you don't play on BetMGM and you want another book, click that link. Sign up, make sure you bet your $5 and get your 158 in bonus bets. You got to be 20 plus. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I think we did it, my friend. You saved me, and Loughy may never get power back. So I don't know, man. It might just be who's joining you in a couple minutes, Mr. Gajewski?
Mr. Gajewski, I believe it's going to be him and me hanging out. Jordan Klein, are you feeling okay, my guy? Little allergy season.
This guy was walking wounded, let me tell you. But he's here doing the show. As always, everyone, just want to say thanks. Appreciate you guys. If you have any questions at all, don't go anywhere. Live Before Lock is starting. They're going to get to FanDuel. They're going to answer those questions. We're going to get more news about who's in and who's out. And let's see some winning screenshots. When you hit them, make sure you tweet us. We want to know it at JazzRazDFS, at Eric Lindquist. For me, for Eric, for Jordan behind the glass. Thanks again, friends. Enjoy Super Wildcard Weekend and just grab a drink, get comfortable. We'll be back in a couple minutes talking and taking you up to lock.
Yeah, I'm set. You guys are mean, making fun of me. Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Make fun of you, Eric.
We're going to this one. All right. We're just doing it this way. Go ahead. Jordan Klein, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL High Before Lock, presented by Owner's Box. Hey, new camera, new setup here. Completely different me. I'm Eric Lindquist. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist here. You might have saw somebody who looked eerily similar to me. You know, not as shiny here, but camera just decided to do its flicker thing. It has like an hour of usage in it, and then it goes night-night. But you know what? We're not going night-night. We're just getting started here. 52 minutes up until lock here of this lovely Green Bay-Dallas game that's going to make me look stupid because I'm way overweight to Green Bay. But I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to this next hour here with my friend, Matt Gajewski, Matt_Gajewski over on the Twitters, college football extraordinaire, NFL extraordinaire. How you doing, my dude?
Doing good. College football in the rearview mirror, so I've had a little more time to dive into the NFL. And of course, it's a big weekend for that, so I'm excited to talk about it. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I just broke this down for an hour with my friend Ben Raza. Normally talking PGA. Come check us out every single Wednesday morning over here at the Stochastic YouTube channel. So far, everything looking really, really good. Eerily too good leading into this final round. So things are looking up. Hopefully we can finish off with a strong week. We could get Benny on or Keegan Bradley. Either of those outrights would be absolutely lovely. We got Jordan Klein yet again for another hour. So, hey, he's always working double shifts like this. So it's not that big of a deal that I would work a double for once. You know, I can come in, but let's just completely change all of my takes this time around. How about that? I'm just going to build different line. Could you imagine if I did such a thing, Matt Gajewski?
Only if we had some severe late news, which isn't the case. So I would be surprised. I was listening to your show right before this. So I think I got a decent idea where you are. And I saw the Sims tool. I think we'll be in line on a lot of stuff, but still a couple things to unpack. Some injury situations, teams changing a little bit as we head into the playoffs. And of course, the schedule change, which hasn't really affected it that much. The totals come up in the Buffalo game, but we're talking 33-38. Still a minuscule total in comparison to the Sunday game. So interesting wrinkle, kind of a late swap spot more than anything. But yeah, we'll dive into it.
All right. The injury news you were alluding to, Christian Watson active. That's going to be a headache here, figuring out how to go about building out some Christian Watson lineups in my portfolio. I have lots of Jordan Love interests, so that shouldn't be surprising. The other biggie, A.J. Dillon. He's inactive for this spot, so it is all systems go for bell cow Aaron Jones. Our dude, we have a storied history with him. There's also this Patrick Taylor character who's at a flat 4K that we'll talk about. And then Emmanuel Wilson, if we want to talk about him at all either. But then we're looking at a lot of interesting stuff here. Jair Alexander, he is active for this one. So a little bit more of a headache for CeeDee Lamb. Although Jair Alexander's played at a far lesser rate than days of yore, that's for sure. But anything else with these actives that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I'm sure we'll dive into the expectations for guys like Christian Watson as we get into the slate, but no real surprises. Kind of thought he would play. Honestly, the biggest one, it isn't even official yet, but Sam Laporta expected to play is probably the biggest thing to consider here because that game still is a good total. Allegedly, Laporta did very little in practice. He's going to go out there with a brace on, so it's kind of difficult to even project his snaps, let alone his role in the game. So, not really an actives for the early window, but Laporta was the biggest piece of news I think we got to this morning.
Yeah, so Sam Laporta, I still am going to be playing my Brock Wright allotment. I don't know how much Laporta sees the field. I would be shocked to see him play 75-80% of snaps. Would you agree with that?
I was surprised he's going to play, dude. I have no idea what he's going to do out there.
It could be decoy. It could be... the one thing that would be the most surprising for me is he plays 80+% of snaps. I think he is more likely to be a decoy. He is more likely to play 15-20% of snaps. I think he's more likely to just play goal line scenarios. Those are kind of, for me, the main reasons that I'm talking myself into Brock Wright. Again, just what's your risk tolerance? Obviously, it's risky, but if Brock Wright is going to play 75-80% of snaps instead of Sam Laporta, if he's going to be out there blocking only, it's hard to really know what the circumstances are. All I know is I get a massive, massive amount of savings for a guy who could be walking into a different role than projected. But we will get there. We go position by position on this show, so it's going to look a little bit different than the last one. Again, we got Jordan Klein taking care of us. We'll walk through the lineup generator. We'll take a little stroll down Sims lane. It's going to be a great, great time leading up to this Dallas Green Bay game. But let's get it started at quarterback, because I get to talk about the entire portfolio I have here and talk about just why it is that I'm going to be underweight to Dak Prescott. There's no doubt that if you're just talking raw projection, he's the guy who you should be playing in a lot of lineups. However, he is 7,600. I have a lot of interest in Jordan Love on the other side of this game, and I just want to have some late swappability here. And if Dak Prescott doesn't go for 30, I feel pretty good about it. If he does go for 30, I'm just going to up my exposure to Josh Allen, because that is a dude that I think has the untapped ceiling out of everybody else remaining there. So there's a lot of ways that I plan on playing this slate out from a late swap perspective. I know you think the same way as I do there, Matt. How are you planning to utilize Dak Prescott in your lineups today?
Yeah, just overarching at quarterback, a lot of it seems pretty efficient to me. Salaries pretty much in line with projection, except for that Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. But if you're going to take stabs at that game, Josh Allen still has paths to get there. So, like his mobility is something to consider. You can run Allen naked. But in relation to Prescott, Prescott is clearly just a better price-adjusted play with the game total. Right now, we have a Josh Allen projection. I mean, it's based on the 30 total. His salary is based on Buffalo playing in a normal game script. So he's clearly, between the two expensive guys, a lesser play. But you do get late swappability. Rather than just like put him in your lineup right away, I'm using more Dak and then going to use Allen as a late swap piece. As you mentioned, you'll get some news. But, I mean, it's really hard to get away from Dak. You have the best receiver on the slate in CeeDee Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just comes down to construction here. And when you look at all the Cowboys, they're going to be super owned. As soon as you start like Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb to Tony Pollard, you're walking into a massive amount of ownership. That doesn't even consider Jake Ferguson's going to be the most owned tight end on the slate. So the only problem I'm really having with my Dak lineups is how to play them. What are you using around him? You need to be careful. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm playing a lot of CeeDee Lamb. So he's come up a little bit. We just reran our projections. If you could, Mr. Jordan Klein, click on wide receiver quick for the people on the screen. So we're talking quarterback, obviously, but everything needs context together for a slate like this, because how you utilize one piece is going to dictate how you utilize another piece, so on and so forth. And I think the most popular stack by far on this slate will end up being Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb. If I can get away from the Dak Prescott side, I feel pretty good. I do not feel good getting away from CeeDee Lamb with the target volume that we've seen, especially in must-win games, especially as Tony Pollard has been more and more ineffective for the Dallas Cowboys as this season's gone on. So you look at the top stack percentage, 35.1% of the time they finish as the top stack. But got to throw this out there. If I can have all of that go towards CeeDee Lamb in this spot, if we can see CeeDee Lamb be the guy who absorbs all of that goodness, I have a really good chance to profit a lot on this slate, and I think that's a pretty likely outcome here. So for me, I'm hoping Dak has a good game, but just not the ceiling game where I can then get different and still have a ton of the best wide receiver play, I believe, on the slate in CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm playing a ton of CeeDee. I don't know how you don't play a ton of CeeDee.
Yeah.
His projection is absurd. And I mean, I worked on it for part of this week on the back end with projections. Like, you give him all the docs in the world, and he's still just incredible. You can cross-reference this with sports books. His prop is absurd, and it's all in line with his role. He's playing a Green Bay defense, which has been non-existent a lot of the year, especially when they've played better teams. They've played a cupcake schedule down the stretch to get into the playoffs. And even if Jair plays, he turned his ankle in practice this week. He also hasn't been quite as good as previous seasons. Plus, they move CeeDee everywhere, use him in motion, put him in the slot. It's not like he's running every route against Jair. So there's really nothing scaring me from this matchup. I mean, at 9K, you have DeMarcus Robinson, you have Shakir, you have value plays at running back. It's extremely easy to get him. And if he's going to be under 50% owned, especially in like these large field tournaments, I'm just playing CeeDee Lamb. As far as that relates to Dak, if you're running the Sims tool, like Dak's going to come along for the ride. I'm honestly surprised I didn't get more of him. And this is kind of just a common theme for me at the quarterback position, coming in spread, taking stands at other positions. I'm going to be around 20% to a lot of these guys, with the exception of Allen and Mason Rudolph. Dak is very much in that conversation because, to your point, there are paths where you see CeeDee eat up so much of the volume. And if CeeDee scores the touchdowns or Pollard scores the touchdowns, that could leave Dak out of this. And then maybe you do want a cheaper quarterback who gives you a path to maybe an Amon-Ra instead of something like a Brandon Cooks. which is what you're going to get in a lot of these Dak stacks. So I'm not getting anything crazy at quarterback, especially up at the top. Be pretty close to the field with Dak.
Yeah. For me, it's looking at Dak, Lamb plus Demarcus Robinson, because that is extremely popular in the Sims tool and something that I think, is obviously going to be a popular stack in general. The Dak to CD, I think we both agree, the projections agree, that's going to be our most popular double that exists. But there are the most popular single that exists, but there's a lot of ways for me to go about and building out different lineups. And one of those, I really like getting to Matt Stafford as well here on this slate. You have a cheapie in Demarcus Robinson. He's the most popular cheapie. He should be with what he's been running 90+% of the routes in every game that's mattered for the last 3 weeks. You also have an opportunity to play Kyren Williams, who has the most sure running back touches out of anybody in the entire NFL. You also have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, 2 alpha wide receivers. And then Tyler Higbee as a cheapie at tight end. I mean, those are pretty clear-cut paths to get different relative to what the ownership could end up being on Dak Prescott. And I am just worried that we get to the flip and see 35% Prescott purely because of yesterday. You had a 2-game slate, and you had an opportunity for Joe Flacco to come in. Oh, he might be 35-ish. He's going to be the most popular quarterback. He was 55% owned. I think that is a little bit of the product of the Sims where some of the good chalk gets really elevated. And for me, I just look at the other side of this game, or I look at the next game with Stafford, and I see very clear-cut ways of getting different. Is there a quarterback that you really like to get different on this slate?
Again, it's tough. Ownership's pretty flat. I think the most under-owned piece is Jordan Love. He's also just 100 more than Jared Goff, 200 less than Stafford. Matchup is toughest for him. I'm just kind of excluding this Buffalo-Pittsburgh game. It's kind of on its island in terms of the total and projection. So among the 4 quarterbacks I actually want to play, I think Love is the most under-owned. That Dallas matchup, I think, sometimes gets a little overblown too. I actually don't think their corners are that good. Deron Bland obviously has all the pick sixes, but
and Diggs out for the year.
Yeah, exactly. Diggs is out for the year. And they have a great pass rush. As long as Love can deliver the ball quickly and on time, which he's done a great job doing of late, shown a lot of growth this year, that should be completely fine. And he also has a full cast of skill position players for one of the first times all year. We haven't seen Aaron Jones play a ton, Christian Watson, of course. Players like Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed are on and off the field, and even Wicks has been hurt. He is everybody, not to mention Musgrave. So plenty of options to use Love with, and he's the lowest owned quarterback of this big 4 bunch. Really the only one I'm coming in over the field with any sort of significance.
Yep, I love Jordan Love today. So Jordan Love, Matt Stafford, and then again, it's not like I have 0 Dak, but I have 10% Dak Prescott, and he could end up being 30. We have him at 26.4%. And obviously, there are calculated risks that I'm trying to take. I think the Sims tool, also, you have to think about the human element of it. Like, it's basically assuming people aren't going to be late swapping, which is kind of the case. It's done within that construct of like, hey, all the games are starting at once. This is the way that the slate plays out. But by me giving myself more opportunity to late swap as the slate goes on, I think I increase my positive expected value on lineups just because it's something that I'm always doing. I've been doing this for years. Nobody does this in NFL. They do it all the time in NBA now. It's that edge is really diminished, but I look at my lineups here right now. I'm very uncomfortable being below on the guy who's the highest projected quarterback in Dak, but there are paths to getting to Josh Allen, Stafford, Love. I want to ask you about Jared Goff, though. We didn't spend a lot of time on him on the last one. I think Mason Rudolph, he is rightfully sitting at that 2% number. I think we can all understand why. But Jared Goff, 20.2% ownership, second most popular quarterback, and I am well underweight on that one as well. Doesn't feel great. He's at home in a dome. We know what those numbers look like. How are you planning to allocate Jared Goff lineups in your portfolio?
Yeah, I like Goff. I plan on being just quarterback as a whole. I'm not playing any Rudolph. I'll be slightly underweight to Allen, decently underweight to Dak, and then slightly positively leveraged to Goff and Stafford, most positively leveraged to Love. I'm fine with Goff. You have the second highest implied team total, and a lot of people are just going to play that run game or punt it off with Jameson Williams or Amon-Ra by himself. If the touchdowns just come through the air, Goff is a player I think that has pretty decent leverage on this slate. Second highest team total, another game that's going to get up and down. It actually is the highest game total overall. You're not scared of the matchup with the Rams on the other side. I think Goff is interesting, and I think when you talk about like Dak potentially coming in overowned, like getting steamed a little bit, maybe this 26%, depending on your tournament, of course, you have to obviously consider what you're playing. And especially in like small field stuff, higher stakes stuff, I expect Dak to be more owned. that could come at the expense of a guy like Goff. So I do have interest in him. Going to be over the field to Goff, Stafford, Love, slightly under to Dak, and Josh Allen. No Rudolph.
All right, no Rudolph. Yeah, I think we both see that one the same. That's for sure. Watch him go out and just sling it. 3 touchdowns incoming. You know what? Here's the thing. If we get to that final game as well, it could be something where I could just bet myself a little bit of ridiculousness live with Mason Rudolph in the event that like I have some really high tier lineups that are going well. That's the other element where when you have betting available to you, you have an opportunity, friends, to hedge your lineups a little bit from time to time, or just being able to live react to them in a way where you can't touch your lineups once all 3 games are live. That's for sure. But you know what? That's why we have something going great where you can take advantage of the betting portfolio. BetMGM, this is a ridiculous offer that they have going that pops up on your screen here right now. You bet $5 when you deposit $10 or more at BetMGM, and you're going to get yourself $158 in bonus bets. That's ridiculous. If you have legalized sports betting available to you, $158 in bonus bets, that's a ridiculous opportunity, your friends, to capitalize on a great thing. That is for sure. So, Jordan Klein, if you want to pull that up for the people, if you could fire that into chat, beautiful stuff here for you. Again, 158 in bonus bets. Seems like a pretty decent way to get your Sunday started. That'll be a $50 bonus bet, $50 bonus bet, and $58 bonus bet just for checking out another sports book. So I would take advantage of that, my friends. Again, 5 into 158. You can do the math, friends. Pretty decent return on investment opportunities for you guys to capitalize on a little Sunday fun day. I would take advantage of that. That's for sure. All right, y'all, let's get ourselves going here to the running back position. Aaron Jones. I mean, we're just going to be absorbing this chalk into our bone marrow, aren't we, Matt Gajewski?
Yeah, of course. We've been doing this prior to Aaron Jones having the locked-in workload without A.J. Dillon. You and I were doing this when A.J. Dillon was playing. Now we have full unleashed Aaron Jones. Matchup's not great. It's been that way a lot of the year. But I honestly think he's underowned for the workload we're going to see. Most of the other backfields are committees to some degree, with the exception of Kyren Williams. So you're just talking about the touchdown spread really working against Aaron Jones. Unfortunately, the guy's an excellent pass catcher. So I like Aaron Jones' scoring expectation a little lower than maybe some other backs on this slate, but he's also cheaper. Love the price-adjusted play here against Dallas.
We're so just going to get completely screwed on this, aren't we?
That's how it's gone in the past.
He's my highest owned player.
He is close for me. It looks like I have almost the exact same amount of him and CD, which should come as a surprise to no one.
I mean, the amount of Aaron Jones I had could choke a donkey.
You've used that one a couple times. That's not the first time I've heard that reference, which is saying a lot because I don't watch any of the movies you talk about.
But you know what movie it's from?
Is that from Shrek?
No, it's okay. No, that'll do, donkey. That'll do. This is
I only know it from
Austin Powers.
I've never seen Austin Powers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my underground lair. I've gathered here before me the world's deadliest assassins, and yet you failed to do me one simple task: kill Austin Powers. That makes me mad. And when I get mad, Mr. Bigglesworth gets upset. When Mr. Bigglesworth gets upset, people die.
How many movies do you watch a week?
A lot.
Do you really?
I just usually have something on when
Like
I'm working
4?
through projections, when I'm working on my own stuff. Yeah. I don't know how many movies I watched last week. I watched Die Hard last week just because it felt like it. I watched, what was that shitty rom-com? I watched Little Fockers. That was on Netflix. That was cool. Jordan Klein. Seriously? Wait, we're doing that?
Please stop. Yeah, the chat's telling us to stop talking about movies.
Okay, we'll continue on. Just an idea. Eric, you are overdue to have a kid. Yes, I very much am. But anywho, Aaron Jones, we're going to get to lots of him. It is going to happen. The Sims tool loves him. I love him. We are in so much trouble, my friend. But lots of other running back targets, one of which being Tony Pollard here on this 3-game slate. I am going to be right around the field. Don't really have any kind of a stance that exists there. Kyren Williams, our boy, I think our call of the year probably when we got him at 3% and played 100% of him when that news dropped like 5 minutes before lock. That he was going to end up getting the bell cow work and that Cam Akers was going to be inactive. Sure, that game didn't start for 3 hours and people were able to get there to some extent, but still 3% owned for the best play of the year. He is now 33%. He is 7,300 with that workload. I would call him underpriced for what we expect that workload to be here, but there's obviously a lot of ways we want to spend our money, and one of those is CeeDee Lamb. How are you kind of shoring out Kyren Williams, Tony Pollard, these other 6K running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook? Who are you getting to the most?
Getting to Jahmyr Gibbs, the second most behind Aaron Jones. Think the path for him is pretty clear. The only worry you have is David Montgomery goal line stuff, but they have a massive run rate over expectation. And Jahmyr Gibbs, he's explosive. He's also the player that I guess is less game script dependent. If they get down in this game, which it's a tight spread, that could happen. Even if LA just gets the opening kickoff, Gibbs isn't really affected by negative game script, whereas David Montgomery does not have the same pass game role. So feel a little safer about him. And then from there, I have Tony Pollard third, but this is one I'm kind of toying around with. I want to get more Kyren over Pollard, and to kind of just talk that through. Pollard's had an awesome workload throughout the year. It started to decline slightly with Rico Dowdle coming on. At the end of the year, Rico Dowdle gets hurt. Pollard's kind of back to his feature back role. We have Dowdle back in the mix here. I still expect Pollard to lead this group, but Dowdle's been more efficient than Pollard. There's really no way around it. I think Dowdle's going to be involved to some degree. So I'm kind of just wrestling with the Pollard stuff. This Dallas run game also still does provide leverage off of the CeeDee and Dak stuff. Like, one really unique way you could come into this slate is just Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then have Pollard instead of CeeDee Lamb. That's a large field construction. But you're going to get massive leverage doing that, even if Pollard semi-owned himself. So I'm kind of just trying to wrestle with my Pollard builds and use him intelligently rather than like jam a Cowboys onslaught, if that makes sense. But he's either going to be my third or fourth most owned running back in the pool, just kind of toying around between how much Kyren versus Pollard to get. And I don't know, I think we're kind of light on the Kyren ownership, to be honest with you, which is why I haven't boosted him a little more.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing Kyren Williams at this kind of ownership, 33%.
Man, I just have a hard time seeing him like. I think he's going to be around 40.
It's so hard to tell. I mean, we're going to know a lot based on Pollard and Jones. So
True.
Pollard and Jones, like if Pollard ends up being 50% owned and Jones ends up being 50% owned, which I think are both realistic things that could happen, we're going to be able to look at Kyren and know that this is appropriate, if not a little bit lower. If we see Pollard come in at 30%, I would say the one guy that's been the hardest to project all season long, and I'm sure our data team can go back and let me know if this is true or not, but Tony Pollard has come in way under-owned for what we've expected on some of these slates. And you know what keeps happening? The tag keeps coming down. This guy was 8K in week 3. He is now 6,100. Obviously, the ownership is going to be very hit and miss in some of these spots, but 39% of him, the most popular back. We'll see. We'll see if people end up getting there to that capacity. I mean, I'm getting there to right around the field, so it is what it is. But yeah, I'm going to use a lot of the Pollard Jones ownership to inform what I'm going to do with Kyren.
Okay. I think that's a great approach because you get information. I think Kyren's the safest running back on this slate, and I don't think it's particularly close.
I 100%. He has the best role in the NFL at the running back position.
Yes. So if you're playing small field stuff, like this all depends on what you're playing. A lot of what you and I talk about is large field. That's what a majority of people play. Your Millie Maker style stuff, scale that down depending on whatever entry level you're playing. If you're playing anything smaller, like Kyren's probably one of the players I'm starting with.
I would agree. He is a great way to apparently get different on this slate. And again, we'll know a lot. I am playing 80% Aaron Jones, though, so what do I know?
Holy smokes. That is risky, but you know what you're doing.
It's happening. It's just happening. Cool. Well, let's talk the rest of the running backs. And then we got a lot of super chats we'll get caught up on. We'll talk a little Owner's Box with our friends. In fact, a great super chat to have a little talk on Owner's Box. Great segue into that. But Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, pick your fighter.
Najee Harris.
Same. So that made it easy. Anything else you want to talk about? I have some, again, it could end up turning into Latavius Murray, but I have some Leonard Fournette in my life for the sake of getting different. I don't know if you feel like Rico Dowdle's that guy for you. Is there anybody sub 4,600 or 4,600 and under that you're looking at to just get in a large field lineup or two?
Not really. I see the Leonard Fournette play. I just don't know how much he actually plays. This is really volatile. Like,
yep.
They do weird stuff with James Cook, man. They would take him out for Latavius Murray earlier in the year. They've used Ty Johnson at times. They've had Fournette on and off the practice squad. but somehow he seems to have like leaped Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson. So I legitimately don't know. It's a hard situation to parse, but they've also gotten really run heavy too. So I guess among the dusty punts, if you're just throwing one out there, it's probably Fournette, but I certainly don't feel good about it. And I'm not going to play any of those guys.
Yeah, I'm going to play a little bit, I think. And again, everything comes with an asterisk because late swap is just all that I'm going to be doing over the course of these 3 games, like the full 2 games, because it's not like I can late swap anything. That's just called swapping and building lineups for the first game. But I'm going to be late swapping into some different iterations of things. If I'm looking for more point certainty, if I have a number of lineups, again, giving a little bit of a boost to Khalil Shakir to get more of him, a little bit of a boost to get to Kincaid, so I have some salary to throw around. I think it's a good slate for 2 tight ends yet again, just to get some of those savings at the bottom that, whether it's Tucker Kraft or somebody else, because those wide receivers like DeMarcus Robinson, Khalil Shakir are going to be very, very popular, but I think for very, very good reasons. So, just kind of depends on how good the lineups look as they go along their merry way. But anything else at running back for you?
What are you doing with James Cook? Like,
Just
so you talked about
banging my
Fournette.
head against a wall and playing none and watching him put up 35 like he did against Dallas. It'll feel great.
Yeah, man, he's tough. The Sims hate him. And I've done the little I know better than the Sims a couple times this year. And it's cost me a lot of money. But you look at this, they're 10-point favorites over Pittsburgh, who's down TJ Watt. I know he's more of a pass rusher, but he's still good against the run. Buffalo's taking this massive run rate over expectation of late. I mean, there's still a path for him here. I'm definitely not playing 0 James Cook. I'm kind of debating how much to play. I kind of like
0,
him.
so again, I'm a dum-dum. It is what
I'm
it
not
is.
saying you're a dum-dum, but
I have 0% James Cook in 150
it's
lineups.
definitely not as clean as, Aaron Jones or Gibbs, in my opinion, and certainly not Pollard, but man, he's not that owned either. Like, I'm guessing he probably comes in around 20-25%.
He could come in really low owned because all 3 of these running backs and Pollard, Jones, and Kyron are taking up all of the ownership.
Right.
Again, we'll have a very good idea of how much James Cook, Najee Harris, and Jalen Warren are going to be owned respectively based on information of the first 2 days. And we get like an 8-hour window or not longer than that. We get like a 14-hour window between the start of the next football game. We're going to have people talking about it overnight on Twitter. We're going to have people that are putting out information. I'm sure we're going to have some guys here at Stochastic that, if you're in that premium Discord, you're going to have access to talk about what that ownership is going to look like, because it's going to be pretty concrete how much is still available to us based on information for the first 2 games. So I can't understate it enough. If you like James Cook, play some James Cook because you're going to have the maximum opportunity to know exactly how owned he's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, late swap is tricky, man. Like, we only have 3 games. See, you need to kind of go in with a plan. If you're only playing 1 lineup, it's easier. If you're playing like 150, it's easier said than done. But I mean, you talk about weather stuff, like that's a lot of the driving factor why he doesn't project as well. But you think about that, it honestly helps him. I mean, they're going to run the ball a lot. They already did in nice games. Now you have the opportunity for this to be a disaster of a game environment. I mean,
they've been saving up bubble wrapping playoff Lenny, my friend. Let it be known. Let it be known.
That would, if they do that, they might. I don't know what the Bills are doing, but yeah. Anyway, that's a lot of James Cook talk. Just want to get your thoughts.
It's a great conversation piece. I think, God, I hate picks. I hate the idea of picks. I know that I give picks on a show about sports betting. I know I give picks on this. I hate the word picks because at the end of the day, the process matters so much more. And so when we have valid conversations about process as well as data, I want to do it. And that leads us into Owner's Box, my friends, because you get up to $500 of a first match deposit bonus. We have a super chat from Chase Harrell, $4.99. Gents, trying my hand at Owner's Box, do you recommend a QB in the Superflex? Any help on some plays for Owner's Box would be appreciated. Well, wouldn't you know it? The Sims tool has direct capabilities here over to Owner's Box. We have projections for Owner's Box. And you have an opportunity to avoid defenses. The Packers defense, my highest own, that's ripped to that already. But just saying, you don't even have to deal with defenses over at Owner's Box, the sponsor of our lovely program. When you sign up now, up to a $500 first match deposit bonus. The tournaments are overlaying ad nauseum in every single sport. I'm telling you, friends, you want to be signed up over at Owner's Box to take advantage of that first match deposit bonus, increase your bankroll immediately, and then play at a site that we have tools directly set up for you to succeed at. Now, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott are 8,000 and 7,000 over at Owner's Box. They are going to be giga mega chalk, and they should be. And I'm going to play them with some Jordan Love here because, again, Superflex, I can get 2 quarterbacks in that. And you look at the Jordan Love side of things, he is pretty darn cheap from what I saw here. Let me pull this back up over on Owner's Box here. My lineups there. $6,400 for Jordan Love to play alongside. Stack up an entire game. Have the entire game environment. If you want to get different, go to Pittsburgh and Buffalo and stack up an entire game environment there. So lots of ways, friends, to be able to fire up and make some money over at Owner's Box today. 100% first match up to $500. That, friends, is worth it enough. So if you're trying to sustain a bankroll, take advantage of that here. Right now, 55% full is the wild card kickoff contest right now. Take advantage of it, but there is no doubt. CeeDee Lamb, the best play on the entire site at 8,000. That is cheaper than what you're looking at relative when you talk about the salary constraints here over at a DraftKings or a FanDuel. So thank you for the super chat, Chase. Hopefully that helped you out. And hopefully all of you guys are signed up and playing over at Owner's Box here today. We've got Alan Smetana, $1.99. Didn't have a question, just gave us $1.99. That was very nice of you. Jorge Yakomi, my guy, my homie, Yakomi. Good to see you. Always great to see you. Welcome to the Team Stokastic. Again, I've seen you here on these shows forever. Didn't know you didn't have a badge yet. That's beautiful. Malcolm Revamp, $1.99. Eric, who you overweight on quarterback on DK? We'll also ask my friend Matt Gajewski here, but sounds like we're both very overweight to a Jordan Love individual.
Correct.
Yep. Jordan Love, overweight. Underweight on the 2 most popular guys, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, rip me. Cool. Excellent transition. You know, that's why they pay me the kind of big bucks. You know, it is what it is. You gotta be able to go from analyst chair over to the host chair, keep a show moving with 2 hours of me. I apologize. That was not the intention. I wanted Loughy on this thing as well. It took me an hour and a half to actually do a movie reference. If anybody's keeping track at home, I'd say that's pretty surprising. Yep.
I didn't catch the full show, but I'm surprised that is the case.
Now, 1 movie reference in an hour with Ben Raza. Also because I don't want Ben Raza to be mad at me. But CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, our boy. 74% of him in my lineups. How much are you getting?
49%.
Okay. He's very good at football.
Yeah, I mean, the only real conversation with CeeDee Lamb is, do you want him to be your leverage point? Like, that's in relation to fading him. He's the best play on the slate. If you're playing cash, first guy in. Playing small field, still probably locking him. If you're playing large field stuff, how much of him are you playing? You need to be careful. That's the only real advice I have for your lineups. Do something that's not just Dak, Pollard, CD, Ferguson, DeMarcus Robinson. Do something that's just not all those players in your lineup for large field.
Yep, I would 100% agree with that. These are good conversation pieces, which leads me to who else at the top of the board are you getting to when we talk about the expensive guys? Because it seems as though the mid-range, for the most part, outside of Jaden Reed, pretty ignored on this slate. You have these expensive studs, Lamb, Brown, Kupp, Diggs, Nakua. And then you got just the bottom feeders, the DeMarcus Robinsons, the Khalil Shakirs, people trying to make them things here, as they should be, because I think they're pretty good plays. But amongst the top-end wide receivers, who are you overweight to? Who are you underweight to?
I'm underweight to everybody else at the top end.
Yep,
and
that's what you had said.
We'll talk about, it's not like significantly underweight. I'm looking at my little leverage score, which just compares the percentage of these players in my lineups versus what they're expected to be owned. -7% to Amon-Ra. I mean, still playing a pretty good amount of Amon-Ra. -0.02% to Kupp, so it's almost neutral. -1.5 to Nakua. And that's because I'm playing a lot of guys in the next range, and we'll get to that in a second. But have no issues playing any of these guys. A lot of them are just in stacks with their quarterbacks. Some of them come at the expense of CeeDee Lamb. But right now, I think prioritizing CeeDee, even in large field, is still something you can do as long as you're careful with everything else in your lineup. So that's kind of why I got to this position. But if you decide your leverage point is going to be Amon-Ra over CeeDee Lamb, I have no issues with that. All of these receivers at the top are studs. The only situation that's a little tricky to parse is Nakua versus Kupp. They've traded big games at times. They're kind of hard to play together. You can do it, but you're going to be really unique, I think, and probably taking some significant stands with players like CeeDee Lamb. So it's really just LA is the only tricky situation. And I didn't really talk about Diggs. I guess we can talk about him. He's going to be almost unowned, but this game environment is horrific. Horrific.
Yep.
He's like, it's almost, when you get like your free square running back, you have the conversation where it's like, what percent ownership would it be bad to play like a 4% or like a 4K starting running back? It's the opposite here. His projection is so bad compared to his salary. It's like, how under-owned does he have to be? What would his expected ownership have to be for you to want to play him? I think he's going to come in around 10%. And I still don't want to play him, and neither do the Sims.
Yeah, it's such a tough one. I think for me, because again, we talk late swap as much as what we do. I am currently, I don't even necessarily have a stand. This is the one guy who could change dramatically for me based on how CeeDee Lamb plays, because I'm obviously extremely invested in CeeDee Lamb and Aaron Jones in the first game. And a lot of my decisions after the fact are going to revolve around how they perform. If they perform well, you best believe I'm playing more Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp in this wide receiver range. If they don't, you best believe I am getting to Stephon Diggs at 7,400 in a spot where I need to make up ground. Because if Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nacua end up failing for whatever reason, then I'm in a much better spot. I don't just have to say, oh, well, I need this to go right, this to go right. If I'm already dead, fire up Stephon Diggs here at low ownership, 17.1%. As you said, the Sims don't like him. He's not a great guy to be getting to independent of, Josh Allen stacks. I find it very hard for me to want to play him as a single out there in the world. But I mean, that can just change so much. That's what makes these slates so much fun, especially now that we have it carrying in over to tomorrow. I'll kind of know what I'm more locked into doing overnight with Stephon Diggs. But let's get to the mid-range here, because Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, who are we playing from the Packers? Because this is obviously a team that we like a lot. But now with Christian Watson back at 4,500, puts a wrench. And, you can dive, duck, dodge, dip, and dodge, or whatever the hell he says. Christian Watson, are we dodging him or are we playing him?
I'm playing Christian Watson.
Me too.
Unowned.
Sucks, but here we are.
It doesn't suck. Christian Watson's awesome. He just can't stay on the field. Guy's a wagon when he plays. Love Christian Watson. I mean, he's been in bubble wrap for the last, 5 weeks, 6 weeks because of the hamstring. Like, he was allegedly going to play in, week 16. He called him a game time decision. And then ultimately, Packers ran the table without him, which was impressive. And they got a lot out of Jayden Reed in the meantime. But now you have them both. And you're not bringing Watson back here, who's allegedly still dealing with this to some degree, to have him just sit on the bench. So I think Christian Watson plays. We know at full strength he's ahead of Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, and Bo Melton. So I have no issues. And if he re-aggravates the hamstring, that's fine with me. He's also a player that you don't have to play a lot of. He's going to be single digits in ownership, and I think he's probably going to be below 5. You make 10 lineups. I mean, you play 2 of them, you're overweight to Christian Watson. So you don't even have to take a real stand here to be overweight to him. Very easy play in a portion of your portfolio, in my opinion, given the talent and the ownership we're expecting. Reed's awesome. He's the wide receiver 1 for the Packers, has been for most of the year. That's not changing with Watson, so he's still another player I'm going to be overweight to. And a lot of this stems from just liking Jordan Love and having a wide receiver 1 at 5,700 versus like the 72 for Nacua or 74 for Diggs, whatever it is. Jayden Reed is a monstrous target share, especially when you start isolating him down the stretch. Just look at splits first half of the season versus second half. And this is important because he's a rookie. Guy coming into a larger role throughout the year. Some injury concern, he's aggravated it multiple times in game, but I don't think that's really going to be too much of a risk here. Love Jayden Reed. As far as the pecking order beyond Watson and Reed, who I'm playing a lot of, I think Dontavian Wicks might be moving ahead of Doubs. All the efficiency stuff points to Wicks. He hasn't played really ahead of Doubs outside of injury situations, so this is more of a leap of faith in IKB. But I do think Dontavian Wicks is a better straight-up play than Romeo Doubs at their prices. And I've seen some chatter on Bo Melton. He's the wide receiver 5, and like he might be inactive today. I don't know. We know Musgrave and Kraft are going to be active. They're going to have at least one more tight end. Packers usually keep 5 active wide receivers. Sometimes they go 6, but I don't know. One of Malik Heath or Bo Melton's going to be inactive today, I would imagine. That probably is already out. I haven't looked, but
yeah, it's out. Let me find if there is anything that I can get on it. Bo Melton, I need a Bo Melton TD.
Anyway, sometimes the whole point was Bo Melton's the wide receiver 5. And honestly, With Luke Musgrave back in action too, there's a chance he's squeezed even further because the Packers will use 2 tight end sets with Musgrave. Musgrave's not a huge inline tight end. When he's out there, a lot of times he's lining up in the slot. That squeezes these cheaper receivers, these ancillary receivers, which is Bo Melton, and I think Romeo Doubs Wicks more than anyone, which is why I'm coming in so heavy on Reed and Watson.
Malik Heath inactive from Tom Kennedy, by the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of them was going to be inactive.
Guy. Yep, I was going to say that the boss man himself coming in, dropping the hammer there. So really good stuff.
I wasn't playing any of Malik Heath or Bo Melton, so it didn't even like cross my mind to look. They're both not going to see the field. Malik Heath's not going to see the field because he's inactive. Bo Melton's, I would guess. I mean, like, I could be wrong on this. I don't think Bo Melton sees the field a lot. With everyone healthy, including Musgrave, which is going to put the Packers in more 2 tight end sets. Not going to be a ton, but when it happens, Bo Melton's not on the field without a doubt.
He gets all the weapons back. It creates a little bit of a headache, but as I said on the previous show, I'm overweight to Jordan Love, so it's easy to move around. Let's get to the cheapies here, wide receiver, because it's a pretty important distinction between some of these guys. We have Khalil Shakir, we have Demarcus Robinson. I love that the Sims love Demarcus Robinson here in this spot, because when you get this kind of a workload, what he's been getting here, 90+% of the routes here for 4 weeks that mattered before, the week 18 that just didn't for them. And they ended up getting Nakua, the rookie record, so on and so forth. He's my favorite cheap guy to get to on this slate. I will obviously be paying very close attention to where ownership comes in on that first game. But how do you feel about Robinson and some of these cheapies? Because obviously Khalil Shakir walking into a potential different workload, though they do love to play their 12 with both Kincaid and Knox out there. Should be wide receiver too, but doesn't fit the same profile of a Gabe Davis. So I'm at least concerned that maybe it's not as good of a role as people are thinking.
Yeah, Robinson's the best play here. There's not really much to it. The guy has an absolutely absurd workload for being at his price. He's just iced Tutu Atwell. You talked about late swap stuff. I think this is important. We're going to get news on Dallas, of course, and Green Bay. My preferred late swap, instead of pivoting off the elite receivers and going to Stephon Diggs, is pivoting off of Demarcus Robinson and going to Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, more Josh Reynolds for reference. The studs are in such good spots. It's hard for me to late swap off of them, but the projection difference even between like a Reynolds versus a Robinson isn't as substantial. So that's kind of how I'm playing it. Pretty overweight to Demarcus Robinson, but I've got my finger on the pulse of this first game. If that goes wrong for me, I'm going to have a lot less Demarcus Robinson.
Jameson Williams, 20%. That's going to be the guy I'm getting away from down here for sure.
Reynolds is my preferred swap. Yeah.
Reynolds is my preferred guy too. 13.3%, $300 more. Again, I promise you, if it had a different name attached to it other than Jameson Williams, he would not be 20% owned by the field right now.
For sure.
I just feel as though I feel that in my bones for sure. So Josh Reynolds, he's going to be the guy that I'm going to ride or die with. I don't think there's really any 3K cheapie that I really want to take a shot on. If you wanted to force something, you had to have something. You could obviously go to like a Trent Sherfield. That was somebody that I brought up previously where in 3 wide receiver sets, that's probably the guy who steps onto the field. But Buffalo, they don't like to do that very much.
Nope.
All righty. Let's jump over to tight end here. But first, guys, check out all the great sim stuff that we have going here. Promo code DRIVE. If you guys want to take the Sims out for a test drive today, better now than never. This is the most football games you're going to have. We got 4 coming down the pipeline the next 2 days. Between the slate today, the slate tomorrow, showdown slates, everything here. $99 for the NFL Sims Max, but that isn't it. The PGA Sims Max coming your way as well. Promo code DRIVE, friends. $99, one-time payment. Get everything through the Super Bowl. You'll have the NFL Sims the rest of the way, and you're also going to get the 2-week access. Again, opportunity to check out some really great stuff, friends. PGA Sims Max. I'm having a phenomenal week right now. I saw Adam Svensson just win back-to-back Eagles. That's good for me. I'm in 2nd and 7th now in the $10. I'm paying close attention to this now. Woo-hoo-hoo. We got a little sweat action coming up this afternoon in the PGA streets. I'm excited. First large field tournament, was pretty excited to take that out for a spin, and it is proving to be valuable right from the get-go. Hopefully I have a nice screenshot to share when all of the dust settles. But speaking of that, tight end, we got to get ourselves moving. I saw Nicholas Lind threw another 10 sub chats in there for everybody. Upgraded badges in the chat. Really amazing stuff. You guys are absolutely the best community here. That's why we have 2K of you. I would love if you smash the like button as we head over here to round out our discussion of this slate. Sam Laporta. I'm going to start with him purely because I think Brock Wright is somebody that I've targeted, identified, talked about, where it's hard to project what that workload's going to be. He's obviously projected for 3.53 fantasy points. He's more of a blocking tight end, quote unquote, from time to time. But in the event that Sam Laporta is limited, that he isn't going to play, I am well overweight to Brock Wright. It doesn't feel good, but it's happening. I also just think that there's better tight end plays for sure. Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid. Who are some of your favorite guys to be getting to at this position?
Yeah, Kincaid, I think, is interesting as a pivot. Ferguson's the best play. Just very clearly, when you look at role, game environment, everything here sets up for him. There's a question with almost every other tight end. Tyler Higbee's in the injury report. How much does he play? The tight ends in Detroit, you've got an injury situation there. Packers are probably going to use 2 tight ends now that Musgrave is back. They eased him into action here, but you could easily see Tucker Kraft coming down in snaps and Musgrave coming up. Then you have the horrific game environment on Monday. Freiermuth is probably the closest thing in terms of role to Jake Ferguson, but he's playing on a team that has a 13-point implied team total. Every other team's above 20, so that's a complete disaster. Low scoring expectation. And then Buffalo, terrible game environment, but honestly, both of them might play more because of the injury to Gabe Davis. That's the trickiest situation on the whole slate, in my opinion. A lot of people are going to play Shakir. I kind of would rather go to, well, just eat the chalk with Robinson or pivot to like a Reynolds or Jameson Williams and then take a stab on a Buffalo tight end. And the good thing about Buffalo, both of their ADOTs are minuscule, so they're not affected by the wind as much. When you look at downfield passing, that's the first thing to go in these really windy game environments. Kincaid's ADOT is minuscule. Basically, it's like Javid Njoku from early in the year. Guy runs a little bubble screens, turns around and gets the ball. So, I mean, that's interesting to me. He's expensive, but Knox fills the same role. And you could see Knox snaps come up without Gabe Davis. So that's, I think, my favorite leverage point for that whole game is just using Buffalo tight ends.
6.73 ADOT on the season for Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, it's horrific.
Yeah, I would like to see you go that way, sir, as opposed to behind the line of scrimmage catching footballs. That's not ideal, but works out for Dallas Goedert from time to time. So not just pepper him with 5 or 6. That's fine by me. Definitely going to be getting to a number of Dalton Kincaid shares here with some of those Allen stacks, so it is what it is. But Tyler Higbee, he's questionable. If he doesn't end up playing, which would be surprising to me, and I think surprising to everybody based on the projections, Davis Allen at 2,700 is just a pivot you want to have in the back of your mind. As for the Monday game, I mean, Pat Freiermuth, is that somebody I've been going back and forth? I ended up getting a little bit overweight to him here. It's obviously a disgusting game environment, and I don't want to go crazy with a team that has a 14 total, but if they're going to be successful passing the football at all here, George Pickens, big target. This guy, Pat Freiermuth, big target. I mean, how are we feeling about him? Anybody else you want to give a shout out to at tight end?
I guess I'm slightly overweight to Pat Freiermuth, and I barely have any of him. So, I mean, I'll caution, shout out. I am a little overweight to him, but he's not a significant part of my portfolio. It's mostly Ferguson. Higbee, I think, goes to. He's my second most on tight end. I'm going Kraft third. Then it's the Buffalo tight end split. I mean, I'm kind of considering them as a pairing. I don't want them both together, but if you were to just look at Buffalo tight ends, they would be my third most owned there. And then sprinklings of the both Detroit guys, sprinkling of Musgrave, just because they'll be mostly unowned.
Stop whatever you're doing. If you want to, again, Owner's Box has this every single week, so I can't say enough how amazing they are for giving us access to it, but there's 3 minutes left. The $50 on DraftKings has 2,700 with 4,500 total. That is not going to fill. There's going to be massive overlay for some of these Sunday-only slates. So if you want to have some positive EV between Owner's Box, between DraftKings right now, there is some money to be made there. So I'm firing something into that just to round out the discussion point because there's some really good overlay. That's the best thing you can do for your bankroll. Use that in conjunction with the Sims. It's basically as good as it gets. So check that out, my friends. Wanted to give that a special shout out here. As we head to defense, Matt Gajewski's favorite conversation to round out every single show. So I'll just ask you, there's 6 of them. Who are you playing the most?
The Steelers. This is my favorite question because it's the question I don't prepare for at all. And I just look at what the Sims give me because I fully trust the Sims. You know, you brought them up in the promo. They work. especially when you don't meddle with him like I've been known to do, costing myself money. But the Steelers, if you're telling yourself a story, I mean, first of all, it's going to start with the horrific weather environment. You're playing Josh Allen. The Steelers have a sneaky decent pass rush even without TJ Watt. They're pretty deep at those positions, so you still have some advantages you can exploit on defense. And I mean, the total is 38. That should be all that's said.
Well, then I guess we will be done saying things.
You can give your take. That wasn't trying to.
No, it's great. I think the Packers are the best defense to get to on this slate. Obviously, everybody's jamming Dak Prescott, so you get leverage off of that. It's a fluky position from time to time. It's a team that's going to throw a lot. They're $2,300, and it saves you $300 over the least. I just played that $50 single entry that, again, is not going to fill in DraftKings right now. Packers are that defense. That was a pretty easy click. And obviously, you want to be still factoring them in. They're a lineup spot. They matter. But yeah, it's pretty flat for a reason, friends. Packers, the lowest projected defense other than the Rams. I will take the $400 savings for sure and just play a lot of CD Lamb here. So cool, friends. That does it for us, I believe. We're rounding it out here. Hopefully 2 hours of me wasn't a disaster going from the analyst chair over here to hosting. No, it got a little bit wonky. Hopefully Loughy and everybody out there on the East Coast is being safe, being mindful of travel. Take care of yourselves, my friends. That's for sure. But Matt, let's just recap for the people. Your favorite quarterback for tournaments?
Jordan Love.
Same. Favorite running back for tournaments?
Gibbs.
Ooh, interesting. We didn't even really talk about him very much. Mine is David Montgomery, if you're trying to get different off of that, but that is not something I'm taking any massive stand on, it would appear. I just love Kyron Williams at this ownership. That is for sure. Wide receiver, we're both jamming CD Lamb, me a little bit more, it would appear. Favorite tournament play for wide receiver?
Christian Watson.
Love you. Tight end, favorite play?
Ferguson, I guess. I don't see a lot of pivots. If you force me to pick one, it would be probably Kincaid, a Buffalo tight end.
Brock Wright, my friends, watch me suffer immense pain. But let's go watch some football for sure, friends. Thank you to Jordan Klein doing an amazing job rounding out this show here, handling all the ins and outs. But he's a professional. He knows how to do these things. Matt, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Thank you guys for being here. I know we're going to run this back in future rounds of the playoffs, so hopefully we'll see you for the division round all the way through the Super Bowl. You guys allow us to do this, so I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it, and I know the whole team does as well. Hopefully we make some money today. Enjoy the games, and good luck, everyone.
Good luck, everybody. I'm Eric Lindquist. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. Smash the like button on the way out, too. Get us up over for 500. Make that a reality for Ben Raza from the previous show, for sure. Go follow him and Matt_Gajewski. Go follow Jordan at Jordan D. Klein over on the Twitters as well. Or don't, because he doesn't want that. Anyway, let's get ourselves out of here. Watch some football. Stay safe, y'all.